on solving problems to the root cause. And it's actually a workshop that was developed, so it's a lot longer normally than 30 minutes. So some of the things that I'm going to expose you to, I'm going to go through pretty fast, and it's going to talk about doing an actual exercise, which we obviously won't have time to do today, but it's to give you kind of a framework for how to do problem solving that we can use, a series of tools. And a lot of the tools that we'll talk about are things that are actually in the newsletter. If you go back to the newsletters over the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of these tools are mentioned individually. So if you would like more information on a specific tool, you can go back to that. And we'll probably be doing some weekly training things on the individual tools as well. The funny thing is, I've done this class a couple times, and I always tell people that even in the class, a lot of times people do not follow the steps towards coming up with root cause. They try to solve problems without really thinking about why there's a problem. So they try to solve to the symptoms, but not to the real problem. And you know, even in the class, if I say these are the steps, people inherently will skip the root cause analysis part. So I want you to think about that as you go through this, and that I see that way too many times with clients where, you know, they're solving a lot of symptoms, but they don't necessarily get to the root issue, and that's something you really need to do if you're going to make long-term changes. So essentially we're going to do a quick introduction. We're going to view a 7-step process. There's certainly lots of different processes. I'm going to give you one, and I'm going to kind of plug in the tools that are used in each step. We'll talk very briefly about creativity and problem solving, and then, of course, question and answer. So what is problem solving? You know, problem solving is about taking something that is happening you don't like and finding solutions to solve why it's happening. And it could certainly be in any area. It could be, why is there a quality issue in a company? Or why are we getting failures in our software? Why is it crashing? Or why is a certain person not working out? You know, maybe there's a employee. You know, Sarah and I had a meeting with a client this morning, and there was a lot of question around why are we having issues on this project. And that gets back to, you know, it's very, very important to be able to really effectively problem solve. What do you think the main reasons that some problems don't get solved in organizations? What do you guys think? Why don't problems get solved in organizations?
Priorities change.
Priorities change, so
people are afraid to talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
Lack of communication.
Lack of communication. Yeah, so there's all kinds of, sometimes you walk in as an outsider and you say, geez, how come you can't just solve this problem? And there are lots of things that could be going on. There could be personality issues, there could be politics, there could be technical issues, and in some cases technical issues are sometimes the easiest ones to solve. I mean, you deal with people issues or communication issues, or so there's a lot of reasons, there are a lot of potential reasons why problems don't get solved. And you end up with reoccurring issues. You know you're not really solving a problem if it keeps coming back. Like it keeps happening over and over again. And it's interesting, when we go out to clients in many cases, when you look at how things happen during a 1-week period, it's very typical of how things happen over a 1-year period. The same kinds of problems will keep occurring. Sometimes you see part of a process that doesn't run smoothly. Sometimes there are opportunities that aren't captured. So what are some of the inhibitors to problem solving? Here's just a general list of some of the things. It could be the problem isn't described. The problem is described incorrectly, so you don't really understand what the problem is. Or the effort is expedited. You try to do a quick solution rather than spending the real time to solve it. There might be poor team participation. Maybe no logical thought process was put into it. There might have been a lack of technical skills. There might be management's impatience. They just want something in there, and they really didn't to come up with the best system. Potential cause was misidentified as a root cause, and sometimes, and this probably happens more than not, permanent corrective actions are not implemented. So you put in a quick fix or something, but you don't really put in a permanent fix that's going to fix it long term. So this is one model for problem solving. It's a 7-step model, and here's the steps. Describe the problem, describe the current process, identify and verify the root causes, develop a solution and action plan, implement the solution, review and evaluate, and reflect and act on learnings. This is a 7-step process. I didn't make it up. It's one of the typical models that's out. So the first step is always describing the process, and it's really like building a foundation of a building. If you don't describe the problem properly, you can't really solve it. And there's some different tools out there. There's an is not tool we'll talk about in a second. You can collect information as necessary to figure out what the problem is. That could include developing control charts, Pareto charts. You could call a customer. And then you create a problem statement. So basically you use some tools and you create a problem statement. Some of the considerations, you want to describe the problem in terms that have the same meaning for everyone. It should not describe the problem in terms of symptoms. And you want to use a systematic approach to define the problem in as much detail as possible. This is a tool that, and I was doing a class for one of our clients, that it's out there, but hardly anyone ever uses it. But it's a structured approach to saying what are things that, what is the problem, what isn't the problem. So it goes through the who, what, why, where, when, how much, and how often. So an example is question is who is affected by the problem, and an example is not question is who is not affected by the problem. So an example might be customer A has a problem with the product, but customers B and C do not have a problem, even though they receive the same product. So can you see how that would be helpful towards identifying what the actual problem is? If you know that customer A has a problem but B and C don't, and it's the same product, what might you think, for example? Anybody? You might think that there's something going on with that customer. Like maybe you send out the product to both customers, but when customer A gets it, they're doing something with it. Like it's sitting out on the dock and getting wet, or they're not using it the way it's supposed to be used, or maybe their specifications of what they're doing is. It gives you insight as to what the problem is by knowing what it is versus what it isn't. So basically this is a structured approach. I won't go through the whole tool, but it's a structured approach to ask different types of questions on what it is and what it isn't, and it allows you to get a better idea of what it could potentially be. And then if you think about it, it's kind of like that game where you have to guess what the other person's thinking. What you know what it is and you know what it isn't, and it helps you get closer to what really what the answer is. And it has to fit. It has to fit all these answers before you know you found the problem. Because if you find a solution, but that, you know, if you say, well, this is the problem, but I don't understand why B and C isn't affected when A is, then you probably haven't really solved or figured out what the problem is. Another one is a control chart. Again, I won't go into statistics, but you can measure variability of things to see whether they're in control or there's a trend. In this case, things are going out of control on one side of the chart. Special causes where it usually is in control, but every once in a while something happens. Or maybe there's a cycle, like maybe you're changing tooling and it creates a cycle. It's another type of tool. Step 2 is describing the current process. So one way, and this is something that's very familiar for us IEs, is a process control chart. So you can use a process control chart to identify what the process is today, and again, that helps you to understand where there might be a problem. And then once you've identified the process and you've identified what you think a problem statement, then you want to identify and verify the root causes. So some general steps to doing this are to create a cause and effect diagram by stating the problem, and I'm going to go ahead and show you this in a second. Then what you do, you brainstorm potential causes for each category of what could be causing the problem. Use the PHYs. I'm going to talk about each one of these in a second. And then you can also use data collection tools if you need more data. You select the root causes by voting and then you verify that the identified root causes was indeed the root causes. And again, some considerations. You want to fit it with the is not. In other words, if you did an is not, then whatever you came up with should fit whatever your is not is saying. Don't stop at resolving a system, and identify whether it's a systemic issue or a special case. Is this something that's part of our system and so it keeps reoccurring, or is there something special that happened that created this particular issue? So let me just show you an example here. So in this example, this is a cause and effect diagram. It's a certain kind called the 5M diagram because it has man, method, machine, material, maintenance, and then they added tool here. What you do is you identify the problem statement. In this case, the problem statement is that there's downtime on the Operation 30 drills, the drill heads. You then identify the main categories, which we already said. In this case, it already has identified some: man, method, machine, maintenance, etc. And then what you do is you brainstorm potential causes. So a manned potential causes why we have downtime. It could be training. It could be experience, work effort. Maybe they're not working hard enough. Attitude, motivation. People are not accountable. There's time off of job is causing problems. So you go to each one of these and you identify potential issues. And then what you do is you take each one of these and you do a 5 why. Why would motivation be a problem? Because if they're not motivated, then they're going to be lax in using the correct method. Well, why is that a problem? And you keep going down until you come up with the root cause. So like a high-level cause would be, the problem is people aren't doing it right. And why aren't they doing it right? Because they were never taught correctly. And why weren't they taught correctly? Because we don't have really a formal training program in place. And why is that? Because we haven't, you can keep going down until you come up with the root cause. Then what you would do if you took this is you'd vote on which you think have the highest impact on this final cause. So again, it's just another structured way to brainstorm by using this diagram. And you can do both, too. You can brainstorm, you can fit them in here. I'm not going to go through all this, but this is basically just a summary of how you do the brainstorming. And again, I know a lot of you are already familiar with this. And again, this is just the 5 whys. Why did this happen? Why did the machine break down? Because it did not have coolant. Why did it not have coolant? Because it did not receive preventive maintenance. Why did it not receive preventive maintenance? Because there's no system for ensuring preventive maintenance is completed. Why is there no system for ensuring preventive maintenance is completed? I don't know. You probably need a system. And you can go all the way back. I did a project for a company where this belt kept breaking. So what was their solution? What do you think their solution was?
Buy another belt.
Buy another belt, that's right. That was the solution. So what they were essentially doing is they were treating the symptom, which is the belt. But the reality was it wasn't the belt. It was something else in the machine that was causing that belt to break. That was the root cause, and they weren't getting to it. They just kept putting new belts on, Same thing, if you have a car and you keep having to replace the tires, so you're replacing the tires, right, but maybe it needs a front-end alignment, and that's why your tires keep going bad. Or maybe you have a poor driver, and they're, I don't know. But, there's all kinds of reasons, and you just keep replacing the tires, then you never find out that that's really not the problem. The problem is you need alignment, and it's wearing your tires improperly, and so you're having a problem. There's just, so you can get, for root cause analysis, you can use customer surveys, you can look at variations, things that maybe manpower, your various methods, maybe you got different materials. There's lots of different ways to collect data to be used for this root cause analysis. Pareto charts, control charts. Here's an example of a histogram that could be used, scatter diagrams. You can plot data out to see if there's an, kind of a correlations. Pareto charts, I'm sure you're all familiar with these. You can look to see where the highest level of defects are, and that's one way to know where to focus. Design of experiments is a way to basically do a structured series of experiments to identify where the highest factor of the problem is. All right, so now once you've gone through, you've now done the problem statement, you've documented the process, you've done root cause analysis, now you have to develop a solution and action plan. Some general steps to do this include generating potential solutions for each root cause identified using brainstorming. Then you rank the potential solutions for each root cause using a weighted criteria matrix. And I'm going to show you that here in a second. Basically what you're doing, you're trying to prioritize which solution you want to try first. Then you generate tasks to implement the solutions, and you develop a detailed action plan. Some considerations for this step include verifying. You want to verify before implementing. So you want to make sure that what you suggest is actually going to fix the problem before you roll it out. That's why a lot of companies, they'll do a pilot program. So you have a potential solution, try it on a small scale and make sure it works, then roll it out to everything. Also consider why the plan will not work and create countermeasures. Again, thinking ahead and saying, well, this is going to help me, but are there times when it wouldn't help me? The solution wouldn't work. And how do I keep that from becoming an issue? This is an example of a weighted criteria decision matrix. I actually used one of these when we bought our last house. So I scored all the things that my wife was looking for in a house, and then the one with the highest score won. And then guess what? We picked the house that she wanted anyway. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what the score was. But, you got to come up with a way of kind of measuring your options. So this is an example of if you wanted to decide which was the best vacation to go on, Hawaii, Las Vegas, Niagara Falls, or a Caribbean cruise, what you do is you pick a criteria. Expense could be one. You weight that criteria. How important is it? You rank each one of your options to how well it fits that criteria. Hawaii is very expensive, so it gets a very big number. Niagara Falls is not that expensive. Caribbean cruise is very expensive. And basically what you do is you weight everything and you come up with an overall score, and that's how you do it. Even if you didn't use the scores, at least let you know if there's an option that's really not a very good option. It would let you start to get rid of those and be more clear as to why you're getting rid of them. Okay? Any questions on this?
Nope.
Once you've come up with what you want to do, you create an action plan, and this is a standard action plan for, I'd say, for any type of project. You've got a task, who's responsible, what the status is, what are we doing, what will be done by the due date, and then a due date. Other things that could be included in an action plan could include task start times, task durations, relationship between tasks. And you start getting into more project planning. So just, again, now we've developed a solution and action plan. Responsibility charting is just a way to identify all the different actions and who's responsible. And there's different roles, like you could be responsible for completing it. You could be just requiring approval. You could be just a support person or somebody who's just going to be informed. In this example, describing the problem, the responsibility for completing this is Tom's. You have 3 other people that have to approve it, and you have one guy you just want to keep in the loop, Phil. He just has to be informed. He's not involved. And people do use these. When we went to see Mark Frasco last week, Mark and I, he showed us his responsibility chart for some of the things that he's working on. So this is something that is used in companies. This is a Gantt chart. You're probably all familiar with this. We use these on projects. Just shows you another tool that can be used for an action plan. This is a force field analysis. Basically, it helps you understand the driving and restraining forces towards meeting some goal. So in this example, if you have a desired weight that you want to weigh, this is your current weight and you want to move it towards this direction. Then there are restraining forces like lack of time to exercise, unhealthy food at home, and they're driving forces like a gym membership and desire to look good. And so the goal is to add or strengthen the driving forces and remove or weaken the restraining forces. So again, just another way of looking at developing action plans. And then we implement the solution, step 5. We communicate the plan, we carry out and monitor the implementation using the selected measurement tools, and we meet regularly. So we have a regular weekly or monthly meeting to in our case, quarterly meeting. We talk about what are we doing, how are we doing as far as implementation. Some considerations, people typically under-communicate. So a lot of times we use visual boards to show actions and also address issues as they occur. You don't want to wait and see how things turn out. It's always good to address things as they happen. That was one of the really nice things that Sarah did. I'm just speaking about Sarah more because she and I just went on this meeting this morning. She saw the way things were going. We're trying to teach this client how to implement standards, work standards within the organization, and the guy who we've given the task of developing standards is not embracing the program. And so Sarah actually went to the client and said, look, you know, we're doing these standards, but he's not embracing it, and I don't want to waste your time or money having us in here if we're not going to be meeting what you need, which is for you to take over doing this. We're just a resource. And so that's why we ended up having this meeting this morning. So that's a good example of if it's not working out, don't just keep going. Let's stop and let's readdress it. In this case, we actually had to talk to the client, and I think they were really happy that we did. So review and evaluate. You want to review the results of the implementation. Is the problem resolved? Are there new issues that have surfaced? You might have to revise the process to fine-tune it and also standardize the improvement. So if we have something we've done that improves, you know, the way we're operating, then we need to standardize it. Just some considerations are putting in control processes, updating work instruction sheets, and modifying other systems in the process to prevent reoccurrence. And step 7 is the final step, which is basically just to reflect and act on the learnings. So the whole point of this, you know, of this whole process is to learn and improve. And if it's a continuous improvement process, you always want to learn. What did we learn from this? Are there some other areas where we could apply the same improvements? How well did we do in terms of the problem solving? What should we be doing differently next time? So the whole part of this is, and a lot of people don't do this, is to reflect. How did we do? You know, do we need to standardize something? Celebrate the success. I think this is a really key step that a lot of companies miss, and that they don't really learn from how they do things, and so they don't have a learning kind of environment. And I'd like to think that this is something that we're working towards. When we do projects, we need to sit down and say, how do we do? What do we need to do differently next time? And there's just some different things. You can use a radar chart to look at performance. And that's pretty much it. There are some exercises which we won't do. We actually have already talked about creativity and problem solving. We talked about Jump-Starting Your Brain by Doug Hall. I know that we mentioned that before in one of our other trainings, so I'm not going to go into this. But there are some tools out there to help you improve your creativity and problem solving. And just kind of talks about some ways that we've done in the past. Again, we've actually talked about this in one of our other trainings. Would anyone like to add any key insights that they've learned about the problem-solving process from hearing me talk over the last 25 minutes? Anything new that you think you'd like to implement that maybe you don't do today? No?
I think we're good here in Toledo, Bill.
You guys are all good?
Yeah, I think if we can if you can get every step answered, I think you'll get to the root cause.
Yeah. Do you think most people do all the steps?
No.
No.
That's part of the problem. People get to a solution that solves their current problem, and they take care of it. But a lot of times they don't get to the real cause.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that, you know, a lot of people don't do a good job describing the problem and identifying the root cause.
Yeah, root cause is one of the ones that people usually don't get. Usually they know they have a problem and they do something to solve it, but they don't know why necessarily they get the problem all the time.
Right.
But they don't.
So I think a lot of people are doomed from the beginning because they don't. Not only do they not describe the problem and come up with the root cause, but then they don't even implement the solution they come up with. So there has to be a follow-through that, you know, There's just a series, you're building, you're solving, you're figuring out what the problem is, you're coming up with a real solution, and you're implementing it and making sure that the solution is actually working. And there are other processes out there, the Plan, Do, Check Act. There's a lot of different ones out there that all follow the same kind of thing, where you have to plan what you're going to do, collect information, do it, and then make sure that it did exactly what you wanted to do. So, any other questions? Any questions about this before we leave this training for the week?
No.
Again, if you look at the old newsletters we did, a lot of the tools I just mentioned, probably all of the tools, are in our old newsletters. So if you would like any more information on them, you can certainly look there. Or if you would like me to even do a training class on any of the particular tools in the future, I would be happy to do that. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead